streaming services, and we're going to talk on Apple TV Plus, and we're going to talk about Ted Lasso season 3. So, Ted Lasso, Sean, I don't think you've ever watched Ted Lasso, have you?
I have not seen Ted Lasso, no.
But you've heard about it.
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah, so Ted Lasso is essentially it started life as a sketch, and the whole idea behind it was that they're going to bring an American football coach over to England to coach Tottenham Hotspur football, and they did this. I remember it was when ESPN got the rights to show Premier League games in America. And so there was this whole advert that they did about this American who has absolutely no idea about football whatsoever coming over here and trying to. It had all these sort of little vignettes with Jason Sudeikis playing this character as he's walking around trying to figure stuff out. And then when Apple came out, they said they were going to turn this into a TV show. And I remember thinking, oh my God, it's Johnny English all over again. Because if you remember Johnny English started life as a Barclaycard advert. And then they made that into 3 films where they spun this character that Roman Atkinson plays in these adverts into films, and I think that they were stretching a little bit too much. And I thought that was going to be something similar with Ted Lasso. But then the first season came out and people loved it. I mean, some of it might have had something to do with the fact that it was a pandemic, and this was something that was a little bit feel-good, half-hour thing. And you still have that basic premise of an American coach comes over to England to coach a football team, and it's about the culture clash that comes out from it and everything like that. But the thing that Ted Lasso always had about it was that it's almost excessively nice. So Ted Lasso himself, he's from Kansas, and the idea is that he shows up, and when he shows up, he's kind of almost been set up to come over to England to fail. And everybody is like, ready. You've seen it. I mean, Sean, I mean, you're a football fan. I mean, I know you support Bournemouth and everything like that. And so you've seen it a couple of times where we have you have an American coach that's come over to coach an English team, and you see the way that they sharpen the knives and they've gone for them like, what does he know about football? Blah 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 blah, and all that stuff happens in Ted Lasso. All that stuff happens in Ted Lasso, but the idea is that the way he deals with it, he's just kind of like this extremely nice, almost Sharon, almost Mr. Rogers-esque. Nice person who just wins everybody over. The players who don't think he knows anything. The owner of his team doesn't think he knows anything, but hired him because she didn't think he knows anything. The press who are just sharpening their knives and everything. So by the time you get to season 3, it's a fictional football club called Richmond. It's called Richmond. They actually film at Selhurst Park, which is Crystal Palace's home ground. Richmond have similar colors to it. So by the time you get to they have been relegated to the championship. They just come back up, and there's all these things about the football that come in. But as the show has gone off, it's become less and less about the football and more about the interpersonal relationships. So you have Ted, you have his coach, his assistant coach Matt Beard. You have somebody who started off as a kit man who ended up becoming like an integral part of the team. But there's been there's been some aggro, and he's ended up leaving and going to become the coach of West Ham. And you have all these different things. You have the owner of the team, Rebecca, played by Hannah Waddingham, who is amazing. I mean, a lot of people didn't know Hannah Waddingham before Ted Lasso, but Hannah Waddingham is brilliant. And I think that the costume designers on this show, they had one remit, and it's that every time Hannah Waddingham walks into a room, you've got to go, wow. If you're a kind of person who is attracted to women, you've got to go, wow, every time Hannah Waddingham walks into the room, because, man, they nailed that. I'm telling you, they absolutely nailed that. And so you have characters like Keeley and Roy Kent. Roy Kent, okay, Sean, you'll know this, but Roy Kent they do this whole thing where there are people within this show who are obviously based on real life football personalities. So when they have a character called Roy, okay, Sean, the thing is, they have a character called Roy Kent. He's always grumpy. Everybody in the changing room is scared of him. He's like a legendary you know straight away. I mean, anybody who knows anything about football knows straight away who this character is supposed to be. They know who this character is supposed to be. And then they have this character who comes in called Zava in season 3, who's quite funny for a couple of seasons. And I think, I'm going to say he's obviously Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He is so obviously Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He's got his hairstyle, he's got his facial hair, he's got his, somehow I don't know how they did, but he's got his body. It's so, and I really like this. I think it works very, very well. I mean, it started off as a half-hour thing, but the episodes have gotten longer and longer, and it's become more of a drama than a comedy because they start dealing with issues like issues that people essentially. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to talk about the things that are not spoken about in football. Things like mental health. Mental health becomes a big part of season 2. Then there's things like, or what happens if there was a football player who was gay? What happens with when people get hacked and their private videos on their phones get leaked and all, and you have all these different things that are put in there, and some people are arguing about it, saying that it isn't realistic the way that they deal with it, and that it's all too nice in the Ted Lasso world. But I think when you're watching the Ted Lasso thing, you have to understand that this is a different world. This is a different world. This is a world in which you can change the sponsor on your kit. You can say, we don't like you because you do bad things in Nigeria, so we're not going to fulfill a contract of having you on our kit anymore, and we're going to just go somebody else without many repercussions. In real life, that could ruin a football club. But yes. So you have all these things that happen. That there's a bit where they have a super league. There's a really, really rich businessman who wants to start his own super league. And as we know, I mean, Sharon, even you must have heard about this when they tried to start a super league with all these different top European clubs. And there were pretty much riots or demonstrations of the supporters saying you can't do this. And in the Ted Lasso way, there's someone who starts to set up a super league, but the way they stop the super league is by appealing to the good naturedness of the people who own these clubs and say, remember when you were a boy, you wanted to play football? That's how they stopped it. So Ted Lasso is extremely optimistic. The show, it's one of its main things that it's extremely optimistic about the way the world is supposed to be. It's extremely optimistic about it's almost as, hey guys, what would it be like if we were like this? What would it be like if this is what actually happened? But it doesn't shy away from the fact that there's darkness with all these characters. So even Ted, with his relentless optimism, they go into the fact that that might be masking something. He might be relentlessly optimistic, but there might be also something in there that is a bit dark. So I quite like it. I like what they've done with it. And season 3 is the final one. I think that they ended it quite well. I think the finale there's things that they do with the different characters that, because obviously you have an entire changing room of characters, and they don't really get that much time to shine, either one of them. I don't like what they did with the Keely character in this season, because Keely, she's a fan favorite character. Everybody loves her. They think that she's so sweet and everything like that. She used to be a page 3 model. She's dating one of the footballers, and then she ends up going out with another one of the footballers. And it's one of those relations that everybody's like, oh my God, that's the Russell Rachel of this show. But the way they treat Keely in season 3, she becomes defined only by the relationship that she's in. And I don't like that. And there's another trope that they do with Keely in this season that I think is becoming a TV trope, that it might not be PC of me to say, but I really, really don't like it. Which is one of those things where you have a character who has shown there's been no hint of anything whatsoever in this direction, and then all of a sudden they're in a same-sex relationship. And I feel like, okay, fine, you maybe are trying to make a point about this, or you're trying to make a point about you can love whoever you love, but the way in which you've done it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't make sense. If you're trying to make me think that this is okay, you haven't told me that you haven't shown me enough to make me understand why this would just happen all of a sudden. And I don't like the fact that they did that with Keely. So I think that Keely's underserved, and Juno Temple, even though she's brilliant, I think she's underserved in this 3rd season. But all in all, I would give Ted Lasso season 3 a 4 out of 5. And I would recommend that, Sean, if you can get Apple TV Plus, give it a watch, because I think there's some things in it that are going to crack you up. Football wise, they will crack you up.
The thing is with the streaming stuff is I'm sort of halfway through a few things. It's like the Star Wars, the Star Wars Visions, yeah. A couple of those because you recommended those. I have been watching Marvel Legends, but that's and I think there's going to be a Black Mirror. So there's a lot to watch. But yeah, definitely. I mean, The thing is, guys, there's just so much, isn't there? There's
way too much. There's way too much.
Yeah, way too much. So
yeah, and